And we're doing another cosmology segment here, folks. First, let's start out with looking at the location of our local solar system objects. There's where things will be in 1 week on January 29th. And we're listening to a very old school song here from around the year 2000. A nearly 20-year-old track. And here's where stuff is above my head. Check out in-the-sky.org if you want to make yourself a sky chart, put in your location. You can even animate. This is the all sky chart, by the way. Just click play, and it's supposed to animate. Anyway, in-the-sky.org is what I use. Have you checked out the smAsho.com/forum? Check it out. We're all the way up to over 100 users already, having had it up only a little over a week, about 2 weeks, I think. And by the way, check out Galaxy Zoo. It's Zooniverse.org's Galaxy Zoo project. You can also go to, I believe it's galaxyzoo.org. And we need humans to classify galaxies, so we actually ran out yesterday, believe it or not. And now we are back. So, by the way, there's some new instructions about the Eagle galaxies. If you need to read about that, they look clumpy. And let's talk about Amy Raines. She's been looking around black holes and discovering them at places that she didn't expect to find them, around the edges of some small galaxies, as opposed to at the galactic cores. So, some more, let's say, anomalies when it comes to classical astronomy here. And while we don't typically refer to black holes as black holes, we call them massive radio sources. At least I've been doing so since the mid-90s, around 1995 or so. It's interesting to see in dwarf galaxies such as Heinz 2-10, believed too small to host a massive radio source. Turns out it does host a massive radio source. Who knew? Amy Raines didn't know, but she does now. So, nice job there, Amy Raines. Well done. We've left links to the article from phys.org about the black holes, which we refer to as massive radio sources found in odd places. Are you aware of the Yara Bubba impact structure? Located northeast of Perth, Australia. This is believed to be a 2.2 billion year old structure. Okay, I just had to hunker down for that explosion there. Anyway, this will be all over the science news today, and this is going to be used to explain every possible major climactic shift in Earth's history, as well as the formation of the moon. So if you want to read all about it, please leave a comment if you have an opinion about the Yara Bubba impact structure. Here's a diagram that we've put up showing the location. And you can find this on different map programs and so on. There's the close-up of that. Links in the description of that also. Let's talk about Tesla. Dear viewers, I implore you to not stand in front of these vehicles, as they do not have thermal imaging cameras on them, and they use software that is not necessarily always correctly written to prevent from doing things like run over pedestrians and smash into cars at intersections. Now, while Tesla has been able to avoid liability for these extreme failures in their self-driving cars, of course, they don't call it a self-driving car, but people don't pay attention when they are driving the car. Turns out, when you're sitting behind the wheel of one of these things on autopilot, at least 100 plus cases indicate that it might unexpectedly accelerate and unintendedly accelerate, smashing into things and causing untold levels of destruction and liability for not only the drivers, but the company Tesla. So I'm not going to say anything else except to say until these devices have thermal cameras on them, they are not and cannot be safe. Thermal cameras can see through fog, and it's ridiculous to not invest the extra $800 to $1,200 in these vehicles to put FLIR cameras, which stands for forward-looking infrared radar, on the vehicles. Are you waiting for the end of humanity? The end of mankind as you know it, when that mile-long asteroid finally destroys all human civilization? Well, it could likely happen millions of years from now, according to Fox News. And yeah, it's another article about the explanation of a 1-inch meteor that broke off an asteroid and created a fireball over Japan, allegedly. Now, how a 1-inch meteor creates a fireball that's visible from the ground, I have no idea. Obviously, it must be made out of tungsten carbide or something. In any case, we've linked to this article as well below the video. Thanks, Smash Team. We're getting into bonus segments early, as there is so much bonus to be featured that you'll have a boner for the bonus feature, perhaps, which doesn't necessarily mean an erection. It could be a metaphor. And we'll go vulgarity free the whole time during this That Is an Ass and That Is a Hole in the Ground section, where we encourage viewers and everybody on the internet to understand the distinction between the two. First, coronavirus case confirmed in Washington State, U.S. Links to this article below the video. It's already killed at least, let's update that to 9 people in China, and there are 3,000 roughly under quarantine observation because of having contact with people confirmed to have the virus. The longer the gestation period for the virus, folks, the worse it is, as you could travel halfway around the world and back again by the time, let's say it takes 3 days to gestate and show symptoms. You're going to be communicable for those 3 days. You're going to travel all around. It's not terrorism, folks. It's not communism, folks. It's just a regular old flu outbreak. And it can kill you if you've got a compromised immune system. Now, typically, if I get a thing like the flu, I usually end up with 1 day of brain fog and no other symptoms, and maybe a mild grade fever. And I have not succumbed to a flu shot since 2012, as I prefer to use my own immune system as opposed to man-made junk technology, when my immune system is probably hundreds of thousands of years old. And that's just talking about the Homo sapiens part of my ancestry, right? Let's talk about being cringeworthy. Now, Tom Steyer is utterly cringeworthy as he tries to say hi to Bernie while he argues with Liz Warren about who told who was lying on national TV during the Democrat debate. Let's talk about other cringeworthy stuff. Now, Hillary Clinton is fully cringeworthy, especially when Bernie got on stage and supported her back in 2016. Remember that? Remember when Bernie gave up his primary bid and stood on stage and told his supporters to vote for Hillary because it's the only thing to do other than become a straight-up communist and attempt to have the government control everything from your breathing to your bowel movements. Anyway, I think Bernie's ideas are ridiculous nonsense, as he'd like to make the government bigger, and I'd like to make it smaller. Anyway, Hillary's been going around telling people that Bernie sucks and nobody likes him. So check out this article on Reuters, as even Hillary is occasionally right and says something that's not insane, as Bernie. Oh boy. Are you ready for the effing revolution, bro? Here's another article about a Bernie bro. This Bernie bro is totally in favor of gulags, man. And he's totally had military training. And dude, he's totally ready for the revolution, bro. So check out this Zero Hedge article. Another Bernie Sanders staffer calling for things like Trump supporters to go to the gulag. as another Project Veritas undercover camera video exposes the god-awful truth of people falling for government lies. If you're waiting for the cavalry to arrive, and you think it's going to show up in the form of the government, vote Bernie in 2020. I wish you luck on that. And let's move on to security at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. As there's a lot of stuff going on in the news. Oh my gosh, impeachment, it's a complete farce. There are no actual crimes or misdemeanors even suggested. But hey, let's talk about it anyway. Senators and congresspeople, as well as news reporters, are under some new instructions as there are metal detectors erected in the Senate workplace. Let's talk about some of the coaching for senators and reps of what to say when a bunch of people ignorant of the rules from the Capitol building are milling around. Please move out of my way. You are preventing me from doing my job. Please excuse me, I'm trying to go to the Senate floor. Please excuse me, I need to get to a hearing/meeting. And my favorite of all, please don't touch me. Also taught to folks in the Capitol building is, if none of those work, try help police. Let's talk about overreach, as I have been recently subjected to government overreach myself and fined $241.25. Let's talk about Bernie's overreach. Now, when referring to the immigration situation, Bernie would like essentially open borders, as since he can't get enough Americans to vote for him, he wants to import them from places like Mexico, which prompted Bernie to state that he will not wait for Congress to act. He will take executive action to accomplish what Congress has failed to do and build upon President Obama's executive orders. And what orders he's talking about are amnesty for illegals and voting rights for 7-year-olds. Let's talk about the government overreach that has visited my very doorstep, the grass Gestapo. Do you live in a place where code enforcement officials may come over with a tape measure and measure your lawn or measure other weeds? Well, if you know pro bono civil rights attorneys, please send them my email address, as I am going to battle against the government, as they have mishandled this case about alleged weeds and vines on the property so badly that I'm going to have certain people audited. So that should be fun for them. And by the way, if you're not aware of my stance on private property rights, my stance is that you should be able to do whatever you want. If you want to build a spaceport in your backyard or an oil derrick, you should be able to do it with zero permission from the government. Those of you not aware of my past of disliking the government, it ranges back to when I was 4 years old. I learned to read at age 3, and the government forced me to go to school anyway, which caused me to say, screw the government, you hack losers. Unfortunately, an institution that was created to serve all Americans has been hijacked by the very bankers it regulates. Bernie thinks that the government regulates the Federal Reserve, when indeed the Federal Reserve regulates the government, since it's able to control interest rates and greatly affect government spending. So since Bernie doesn't even know what the Federal Reserve is, he's outraged that the banking cartel, which was written by bankers, is run by bankers. He probably thinks hospitals shouldn't be run by doctors either, as he'd like them to be run by politicians, like everything else in the universe or multiverse or whatever you believe in. Talk about ignorance. How about some stupidity? Do you think Bernie should be mummified Lenin style after he finally retires and croaks? Now, I'm not suggesting that he should or shouldn't be, but Bernie should really retire, as he's old, extremely unwise, extremely economically illiterate, and his ideas are more stale than Lenin's suit. Let me keep the arrow out of the screen so that nobody gets any problems with their screenshots. By the way, it's not helpful to the middle class to raise their taxes, Bernie. Also, Bernie believes that higher taxes stimulate the economy, which is why he fills up his swimming pool by taking buckets of water out of the deep end, spilling like half of the water, and then pouring the rest in the shallow end. My favorite quote ever from Bernie is, at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need a choice of 23 underarm spray deodorants or of 18 different pairs of sneakers when children are hungry in this country. And if that doesn't illustrate economic illiteracy, I don't know what does. But I'll say this. Hey, Bernie, when it comes to underarm spray deodorant, economics, the role of government, socialism, sneakers, and nearly everything else you talk about, you need a lot more than deodorant, because your ideas stink. You ever notice how some people are very hard to reason with? Well, some people are about as easy to reason with as but you get the basic idea. Again, feel free to take screenshots, folks. These are all smAsho Pro Meme originals. And finally, let's talk about vultures, like the local code enforcement official, Sandy Nicolo. Now, some vultures are useful creatures that only prey on the dead. They help to sterilize the forest and get the nitrogen cycle rolling and all that sort of stuff. That's good for the environment. Other harmful creatures prey on ignorant brain dead, which is bad for the environment. Here ends today's wildlife lesson. And here's the fine that I was assessed by an overreaching bureaucrat who told me I have to cut down an entire hedgerow, which I don't even own. And then when I asked the property owner what I should do, I went back to court, I offered to trim the hedges, and was greeted with punitive fines in addition to the original citation for weeds and vines on the property. So once again, I say, screw you, government. Let's shrink you down as you work for us. You bureaucrats, you work for us. We don't work for you. Understand it, as it's going to become more and more evident as time passes. Enjoy it, bureaucrats. Your time is limited. If you've had bureaucrats intrude in your life, check out IJ.org, the Institute for Justice. Have you received some sort of fine or had your assets confiscated by the government or something like this? Well, just click on Report Abuse and fill out their little questionnaire online. They will call you. They called me about this very case before I had a fine assessed. And we're just hoping that they call back, as we've contacted them thrice about this, as the situation continues to escalate, and we need legal representation for our appeal, because we'll be appealing that ridiculous, nonsensical fine and attempting to audit the local code enforcement official for corruption. Let's talk about more corruption. It's in the form of the media, who claimed that the Syrian government dropped chemical weapons on its own sovereign territory. Well, apparently this leaked OPCW, which is involved with the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons organization, apparently one of their investigators concluded that the canisters could not have been dropped from a plane and were placed manually on the ground and were destroyed as a result of an airstrike, when terrorists tried to house their pre-World War I era chlorine gas tanks in places that got airstruck because the Syrian government was fighting terrorists within its own borders. Now, I came out with a story about this about 5 minutes after it happened, as I didn't believe the ridiculous mainstream media accounts that Syria had launched airstrikes involving chemical weapons on its own territory. And since they didn't, perhaps read the article here. If you're wondering where it's from the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, another organization we'll be contacting perhaps today to help to represent us in our own private property matters. By the way, if you enjoy the content, please press like and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll be making possibly even a third video today. We've got bonus segments, as we always do. This one in the form of the colorized magnetogram of our local yellow dwarf. And whether you're studying economics or studying the government, as they're all related, the sun is extremely important in all of these things, and all of your weather comes from space. And let's just close things out with this SDO view of the sun in 131 angstroms. We're looking at 48 hours of the activity there. We are out. Thanks for tuning into the Cosmology segment. Again, please visit the links below the video. Head to smashomash.com/forum. consider becoming a patron, etc. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.